Good evening and welcome to the City of Battle Creek, Michigan in the Battle Creek City Commission meeting for September 20th, 2022. We'll start our meeting with a moment of silence, and then we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Morris to please lead us in the pledge. Would you please stand if you can for a moment of silence? Commissioner Morris.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Blood.
Present.
Commissioner Gray.
Present.
Commissioner Herring.
Present.
Commissioner Lance.
Here.
Mayor Banky.
Here.
Commissioner Morris.
Present.
Vice Mayor Reynolds.
Present.
Commissioner Sophia. Here. And Commissioner Zenda Wilson.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have all 9 commissioners here tonight, and I appreciate that very much. Next item on our agenda is the proclamation and then awards. And we have a proclamation for the Crazy for the Kazoo. I'd like to call Carl Fetters up for that, please. Carl, in your own words, could you tell us a little bit about this event?
Yeah. So credit to my staff, Patty and Bessie, who put this on, but this is an event that's going to be October 1st. You can sign up at bcwater.org/events. We check in from 8 to 9 on October 1st, and we work for about 2 or 3 hours doing a variety of different things. There's going to be cider and donuts because by then it will be fall, I think. So we're going to be planting some trees and painting signs in the parks, picking up garbage at some of the boat launches, and there'll be a crew that will be in the river actually getting stuff out of the river. So this is an event to kind of show our appreciations for the Kalamazoo River.
Carl, thank you very much. And if you really want to get dirty and have fun, and then I believe there's a lunch at noon, or there used to be a lunch at noon, please plan on attending this event. I want to thank Patty and Beth for their hard work. I think they've really organized a number of volunteers, and I just want to mention a few of those. I think I saw their name in here. We had almost every township in the area: the Hart Dole Inouye Federal Center, Kellogg Community College, Battle Creek and Lakeview Public Schools, Battle Creek Area Clean Water Partnership, and it really says a lot about our community. So on behalf of the people of Battle Creek, Carl, I would like to present the proclamation. Thank you. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is Chair noting any added or deleted resolutions.
There were none.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our presentation. Our Chief of Police is here. Ted, do you want to say something first and then?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we will continue with our staff presentations this evening. Obviously, the Chief is here with a few members of his team, so we will turn it over to Chief Blocker for an update on what's going on at the Police Department.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Mayor and the Commission. I really appreciate this hour you've given me tonight. Listen, the staff knows I'm a stickler for the 10 minutes, and I know you are too, so hold me to it. If not, I'm going to be eviscerated tomorrow morning, I'm sure, because I usually am the one eviscerating. So really, you get to hear from me all the time, but not as often do you get to hear from our deputy chiefs. Both of them have been holding those chairs, those positions for the last year. And so I've encouraged them to stand before you today and talk about their respective bureaus and their areas of responsibility. And also importantly, the importance of bringing them together. That is more of an art than it is a science. And we connect 2 bureaus through process. And it's constantly evolving, and we're constantly trying to get it better. Even in the tragedy of the last 24 hours is a good example where something happens on the road that we have to immediately interject one bureau, Patrol Bureau, and the Investigations Bureau. And so these gentlemen tonight are going to walk you through each of their bureaus, sort of the highlights, where we were, and more importantly, where we hope to go. And so first up will be Deputy Chief Shannon Bagley. He is responsible for the Investigations Bureau.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's a pleasure for me to be here this evening. Once again, my name is Shannon Bagley, and I'm the Deputy Chief, and my side of the house is the Investigations Bureau. Can I have the first slide, please? Quickly, people ask, well, what does investigations entails? And real quick, I'll go through. So under my span of control is the Crime Lab, the Detective Bureau, the Fusion Center, and the soon Community Service Division, our Gang Services Unit, GSU, Highway Hotel Interdiction, our Records Department, Special Investigations Division, and our Victim Advocate. Kind of the hub of the Investigations Division is found within the Fusion Center. If we could get the next slide, please. And what contained within the Fusion Center is not just all of investigations, but our community partners as well that kind of help us provide services and offer solutions to problems that we encounter within the community. So real quick, some of our partners are Adult and Children Protective Services, the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, Homeland Security and Investigations, Juvenile Probation, Michigan State Police, the Nottawa Sept Band of Potawatomi, Pohegan Tribal Police, Probation Parole, Safe Place, Summit Point, and you're going to see some asterisks by the last three. The first two, Community Corrections, and the second, Federal Probation. They had a presence in our Fusion Center, and of course, we've all been dealing with what COVID and the impacts of COVID within our various departments, and we hope to regain those positions here in the not too distant future, but it's a capacity issue with those two branches, and as they start to develop and regain some staff, we're going to see that relationship come back. And then Marshall PD is one which we've engaged in numerous conversations with, and they see the value of the Fusion Center along with our partners as it relates to how do we solve crime, right? It's not just about putting bad people away. It's about how do we get in front of it? What can we do to build the relationships, work with patrol in a very synergistic manner so that we can get out ahead of things, right? So we leverage data and information, and when we use that information that's gleaned through investigative components, and we look at what's going on, not just in our community, but nationally, because, well, trends they usually start on the coasts and slowly work their way to the interior of our country. So they wind up right here in our community. So it's a tremendous impact on how we look at things through the lens of data, but more importantly, how we plug in resources so that when something occurs, we can get the resources to the families and the victims that have encountered these tragedies so that we can help them become whole. And secondly, how do we prevent these incidents from happening? Next slide, please. Well, before I turn it over to Deputy Chief Gillian, I know I went pretty fast, but I'm trying to stay under the timeline. So any questions directly related to investigations?
Any questions for Sean?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Deputy Chief. Thank you for being here and giving us this information. I love that you're looking outside of our own community into communities like Marshall and other such. Are there any other communities within Calhoun County that you're networking and bringing into that Fusion Center to really, because we know that it's not just Battle Creek, it stems out, right? It's a spider web of communities and being able to communicate. Are there any others you're bringing in?
Certainly. Calhoun County Sheriff's Department, Emmett Township we work very closely with. Part of the participation is they're always welcome to come, and we work collaboratively with all jurisdictions or agencies within Calhoun County. It's just depending upon staffing levels, whether they can make the commitment to at least staff a body one day a week within our Fusion Center so that we can actually have a face-to-face. There's no substitute for face-to-face dialogue and communication, especially when you have incidences that are rapidly evolving within their respective communities. So yes, we are always looking to how do we bring in more people underneath the Fusion Center tent, if you will, and that is so that we can have that impact within the community. We're seeing the same incidents occur throughout Calhoun County, and it's not so big that we're not running into the same people. So how we go about getting ahead of some of these issues is working collaboratively with all the jurisdictions within the county. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was around when the Fusion Center was just an idea and then became a reality. And I'm curious in those years since what you would consider the biggest, accomplishment as a result of the center being there, aside from the partnerships that have grown.
Sure.
But on the side of the folks who need those supports, could you just lift up a couple things that you think have happened?
Certainly. I think our victim advocate program, and it's come to fruition here in the last maybe 2.5 years, if memory serves me correct, has had probably the most significant impact within the community. And I reference that as since 2020, this community has unfortunately had 22 separate individuals fall victim to homicide. Well, that victim advocate has actually had touches with the family members of each and every one of those victims' families. And a lot of times what happens, unfortunately, within the system in which we operate is an incident happens, a tragedy happens, a loved one is violently taken away or lost, and the court process starts, and there's absolutely no one there to help that family, to help that grieving loved one get through that process. There's a lot of questions. Most people aren't familiar with what lies ahead. Sometimes it might be a witness situation and the family member that has to get up and testify. So having that victim advocate that can not only help them kind of lay the trail out for them what they can expect, but also plug them into resources, whether that be some type of help with counseling, juvenile, if it's a juvenile situation, or adult counseling, bringing resources in. It could be food, it could be residency. Plugging that victim or that family member into the resources that they need so that they can at least get some stability within their life so that we can help them manage the crisis process that they're in.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? I want to thank both the commissioners who made the questions, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then following Shannon will be Deputy Chief Troy Gillian. He's responsible for the patrol division. He is one of our own, nearly a 23, almost 24-year veteran of the department. So we have seen him from the day one develop, grow, and ultimately end up in this current position.
Good evening, commissioners and citizens of Battle Creek. First, we'd like to start off with talking about some of the challenges that we have been all familiar with for the past couple of years, that being COVID and how that affected the police department. COVID threw us a pretty good curveball. We had to think outside the box. Officers had to make decisions sometimes. Is this something where I need to go in person, or is this something that I can talk to a citizen over the phone and explain to that citizen what that was about, especially when we dealt with social distancing. We had officers that had to wear masks at calls and dealing with things. It's very tough to arrest someone, but it's one of those things where it's up close and physical contact has to take place in an arrest. Speaking of that, the next day we will get a message that 1 or 2 or 3 officers have been affected with COVID, and we had to deal with that. The department for the past year, I've never seen anything like it. We've really come together. We really worked hard, and the families are owed a lot because there was a lot of forcing. Not just because of the shortages due to COVID, which were many times last minute, but some of our staffing challenges, which I'll talk about next. We attempted to get ahead of retirements, knowing well in advance that we were going to have a lot take place. Again, COVID threw that curveball where police academies struggled with how they were going to run classes. And we ended up having a serious situation where we ended up almost 25 to 30 officers short. That came from our normal shortages plus a grant that we were able to gain to hire 8 community police officers, which I'll talk about that more here in upcoming moments. So our team was able to put together a recruiting team along with some of the city management team to help us put together a hiring blitz, so to speak. Words were out there that many people weren't interested in police work anymore for some reason. But we were able to focus some of our efforts into showing what the Battle Creek City and Battle Creek Police Department had to offer. We were able to hire 24 bright, young candidates in short order, and I don't think we've ever done that in history, at least from what I've ever seen. Now, I'll tell you, just because we hired 24, that does not mean that we lowered our standards by any means. One of those candidates had some problems and struggled, and unfortunately could not make what we need out of our officers here in Battle Creek. So right now, we have 7 that's on the road being trained. 3 were just released on their own, brand new, fresh, bright, young officers. And we have 4 that are still in training right now. Hopefully mid-October, they will be released if they make all the standards. Currently, we have 16 recruits that are in our local academies, 14 at Kellogg, 2 at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. Now, with that being said, and with the commission's blessing with our last budget, we recognize that we need to keep that gas pedal down because, again, like I said, we can't let any of our standards go away on this. Those officers need to make those standards. And to say that all 16 will make the role would be foolish. We really don't know. We hope that all 16 will, but we're going to make sure that they can fit the bill for what we need them to do here. So we need to make sure that we stay in advance of that along with our pending retirements that could take place over the next 2 years. With that, we did have some other problems that COVID affected us. We talked about equipment shortages. Right now, we don't know if we can get new patrol cars for next year. We don't know what that impact is going to be like as Ford is having problems putting vehicles onto the street. And we, of course, we need cars. We need cars so we can get to our calls in time and everything else. We need cars that mechanically are sound and can work right. So that's going to be another curveball that we're still looking to figure out. We don't like to run our cars 24/7. We try to give breaks, but we may have to come out, think outside the box with how we're going to deal with that. Equipment has been a challenge. Uniforms has been a challenge. Gun belts have been a challenge. All of these things that you don't take for granted, so to speak, we've had these challenges at our local police department. For once, it's not a money issue, it's just a supply and equipment issue. But we will see that we talk about challenges addressing some of our concerns due to our shortages. We've had to run short sometimes. We've had to force officers in, and sometimes you have to make a decision between can we run short 1 or 2 versus do I have to force the same officer in who's up to maybe 60 or 70 hours this week. And there has been some times where we have to focus on what we call part 1 crime. When we look at calls coming in, do we go to the man with a gun, the assault, the domestic, the robbery? Those are always first on our radar. And unfortunately, calls we'd like to get to, those little ones that the commissioners always get a message about, the loud noise, problems at the parks, we get to those as soon as we can. Our response times, though, as you can see from the grid, for the past year, maybe a 45-second difference from the years past. So even though with our challenges and problems we've had over this past year, we've maintained trying to get to calls as soon as we can. So our service has not failed at all. We still require officers to make it to calls, to follow up, to still work hard, and we made it through that challenge. It's been difficult, but we have made it through that challenge. But as we deal with what's happening in Battle Creek, we also look at the recovered firearms. And as you can see, we've recovered 82 firearms. I will tell you that number over this past week has been significantly higher. I could easily add probably 10 additional guns over this past week that we've located. Those are guns that were carried illegally or guns that had no purpose in being out in the streets. Like I said again, our focus is on humanity and keeping our residents in Battle Creek safe. And even though we do have those pet peeves, we do care, we just need to make sure that no one's harming each other. And our focus has to be dealing with those types of crimes, especially the one we deal with the 2-year-old that we're dealing with right now. Those become priority. Next slide, please. So moving forward into this next year, we can't be mistaken that there has been a toll on our officers. We know that over the overtime and the shortages. So we're really looking at reducing some of this forced overtime with our new hires that we're bringing in. Of course, there's mental welfare involved in that as well. We're looking at backfilling vacant positions. We have shortages right now. We have some areas that the Detective Bureau right now is short 1, along with some of the other areas. We want to backfill those positions as soon as we can. Getting back into the streets, I will tell you that I'm very proud to say that specifically wards 1, 2, 3, and 4, we want to put community officers back in those areas to deal with those specific areas and those specific problems. Similar to how we have a downtown officer now, we want an officer that people in that area, they know, they recognize, they can work with that officer, and that officer will help them solve their problems. Just like we used to back many years ago, you know, your neighborhood officer. We would like to get back to that. We would like to get back to parks and neighborhood concerns. We deal with them now, but we really need to target those and those specific little problems, the speeders and the things that we all hear our citizens upset about and complain about. We need to get back to our community events and making sure that we can attend these and be a part of the community more so than we've been in the past year due to staffing shortages and COVID. Training. We need to make sure that our officers are trained and they're able to go to what is offered, make sure that officers are well aware, legal updates, and everything else to make them the best officers they can be for this community. And we also, of course, we're looking at bringing back the Citizens Police Academy this fall, hopefully, and the Police Explorer program, which involves our youth age 14 to 20. All in all, it's been a rough couple years, and we thank the citizens of Battle Creek and the commissioners for sticking with us. The city is meaningful to us, but we have an extremely bright future ahead of us, and we are very excited to see what this next year is going to bring us. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Troy. Are there any questions of the commission? Real quickly,
Yes, sir.
Deputy Chief, could you go through the new communication system so that a person like myself who doesn't communicate very well with the phone, how's it going to operate?
You talking about the spider tech or
Right.
the?
The new communication system where you guys will reach out to the complainant before you arrive?
Yes, so we instilled a program called Spider Tech, and that is still, we just started it last week. And what this program, I call it DoorDash for police officers, similar to how you order your pizza, and you get a text. And so not every crime, but certain crimes, the citizen will be alerted via text saying that this is your officer, this is the complaint number. And if the officer delayed, stopped by a train, as we know in Battle Creek, that often happens to us too, or there's any delay for service, you will get a text saying your officer may be 5 minutes, 10 minutes delayed based on that. Once the call is complete, you'll get a complaint number, and you'll get updates as your complaint goes through the process to make you familiar and aware with what is happening, and you'll know how to get a hold of that officer in case there's any additional questions.
Perfect. Thank you very
Yes, sir.
much. Any other commission questions? Deputy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Blood, sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say, we've seen in our office, we've had an interaction with Spider Tech. The spider, I think that was a great analogy to bring it down in relatable. And it was very helpful, the person who was utilizing it. So I look forward to seeing it continue to grow. And I did want to say, I'd raised my hand, but I think it was kind of low. I appreciate that you recognize the stress, the mental stress of being forced overtime when you're reaching 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Being an officer is stressful enough, I'm sure, than being, forced into that time frame. I'm hoping that, everyone is being supported, their families, because it takes that emotional toll on kids, spouses, partners, and things like that. So thank you for recognizing that and lifting it up and hopefully leaning in and helping those individuals.
Not a problem. And I'll add in that we have the city's program for employee assistance. We have peer support. That every officer right now is also going through a program called Brain Health that talks about these very specific things and how to deal with this in your diet, sleeping, habits, and everything else. So we do care very deeply about our officers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And thanks, Troy. I'll just wrap up by saying, first of all, thank all of you. Things like the Fusion Center wouldn't happen had you been willing to listen to our crazy idea. That's always developing. I'm not saying it's the right way. It is a way, and it's the way we're doing it, and it seems to work for us. And it's continuous improvement and always learning. That's really what we do. It's one of our operating principles. And then finally, thank you for bringing up Spider Tech. And for anyone else that mentioned it, we probably should rename it, I guess. I don't like it either, but it's basically Amazon or DoorDash. One of the most powerful things about it, though, is immediately real time after you've dealt with an officer of an incident you've just had, you have an opportunity to do a quick survey. Talk to us about how you feel, what was the performance, and so far we have really appreciated the response, and frankly the officers are too. So pending any other questions, that's all we've got. Mayor?
Any questions for the chief? Chief, we want to thank all three of you for everything you do in our community, especially for everything that took place today.
Yeah.
Thanks. Next item on our agenda is chair noting any added or deleted resolutions.
There were none.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is petitions, communications, and reports.
Yes, we did receive a communication regarding resolutions 495 and 496, and those communications were forwarded to all of the commissioners.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
The City of Battle Creek, in accordance with Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended, and the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act of 1990, is required to complete a performance report detailing the accomplishments of the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership programs. This public hearing is for the purpose of receiving public comment on the 2021-22 Draft Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or CAPER.
Declare the public hearing open. If you'd like to make public comment on the subject of this public hearing, then please raise your hand and wait for us to acknowledge you, and then come forward to the podium where you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. Please state your name and address before making your comment so that we may get back to you if we need to. Are there any public comments for this public hearing? Are there any public comments? I'd like to thank you for declare the public hearing closed. Next item on our agenda is adoption of ordinance. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
This this ordinance adopted amends Chapter 882, Real Estate Taxation, to add Section 882.20 entitled Exemption for Blue Light for Redevelopment Project. Hollander Development is planning a multi-phase redevelopment of the former Kmart site at 200 Southwest Capitol Avenue into affordable housing, community amenities, and compatible commercial uses. The project will include resident and community amenities, including an early childhood learning center and community center, along with other shared amenities and green space areas. The affordable housing portion of this project, to which this pilot request applies, will include a total of 96 new construction apartment flats with a focus on low and moderate income families divided between the Condo 1 and Condo 2 sites. This particular proposed pilot ordinance, Section 20, identified as Blue Light 4 redevelopment project, Condo 2, will include two 24-unit 4% LIHTC buildings. Buildings in the Blue Light 4 redevelopment project will only include 60% AMI units and 120% AMI/workforce units. A pilot is essentially a tax exemption for a housing development, with the developer sponsor being responsible for making an annual payment as compensation for services provided to it, such as police and fire protection and other essential services.
I move for the approval of Resolution 491.
Support.
Been moved and supported to adopt ordinance Resolution 491. Are there any public comments at this time?
Mayor, if I would, I want, the developer is here this evening, and I just wanted to acknowledge him and give Matt, if he'd like, an opportunity to provide a few comments on the project.
Thank you very much for your investment in our community. And out of curiosity, blue light, is that because of the Kmart Blue Light Special?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We are using a working title for the project right now. First off, my name is Matt Hollander. I'm the president of Hollander Development Corporation. We're a Kalamazoo-based affordable housing development firm that has been doing affordable housing, multifamily developments around the state of Michigan since 1979. This will, I think, be my fourth or fifth time coming before this body, trying to get a project done in Battle Creek, and I'm very excited. I think that this is the one that can go. We're waiting to come up with a proper name for the project because one of our goals with this project is to have a lot of community involvement. We've had two neighborhood charrettes so far in terms of the design process, and we do intend to continue to solicit feedback from the community throughout the development process. So what we are asking for today is something that will help us in a competitive process with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. We have an October 3rd deadline to submit a funding request to them. And the reason that this is condominiumized into two different condos, and the reason the structure might be a little bit more confusing than what you're used to is because we're trying to get every single competitive point we possibly can to make this happen. But if we are successful, we would be bringing 96 new units of affordable and workforce housing to Battle Creek, along with a multi-generational community center in partnership with VOSACE that would include licensed childcare on site, as well as amenities for elders and kids in the neighborhood there. And we're also working with Mr. Deering's office and others to make sure that this dovetails with any future redevelopment of the renaturalization of the Kalamazoo River. So really our goal here is to tie downtown together with the existing neighborhood, bring the residents in, make it a place that the residents of that neighborhood are proud of and can call their own, and create a gateway into whatever redevelopment occurs along the river. So thank you for your time this evening. And
If you could just stick around for a couple of questions from the commission.
I would be happy to.
Any questions? Commissioner, you're in.
First of all, I think this is a perfect opportunity for a little community engagement with a name contest. I can see it happening. And I'd just like to say I'm very thankful that you guys came back to the table yet again, and I'm excited to see this project get started and get going. So thank you.
Thank you. We're ready.
And Commissioner Wilson.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Matt. Having been a participant in the one charrette, I can say that your engagement is really authentic. I saw even just, ours, Charette, was, I think, the night after community one, and we were the community stakeholders. The other one was actual residents in the neighborhood. And they even brought what had occurred the day before into the second charrette. So it was very clear that there was an interest and a desire and a commitment to really follow through on what you're hearing. So I appreciate that. And the way that you are approaching our community in partnership and alongside those who are already here, instead of just dropping in and trying to do it, is very much valued. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blood?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I echo my fellow commissioners in saying thank you for coming back and coming back with authenticity. And one of the things I liked and appreciated, and some people may not, but under financing, I like that you're not financing commercial development under the credits and the other things. I know that's, written in where you can, but I really like how you delineated those and separated them. You're focusing on the community aspect, which is the most important part first, and you're trying to get that finance to get that in, understanding that phase two, developing that commercial space comes second, but realizing that people need homes and childcare and other financial things first, rather than making a dollar. So I appreciate that delineation and the attention to the first phase first. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, I believe that's it. Thank you very much again, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you for your time.
Are there any other comments at this time for the adoption of Ordinance 491? I'm not seeing any. Are we prepared to vote? Please vote on the adoption of Ordinance 491.
Vicki, can we do a voice vote for me, please?
Sure. Commissioner Morris?
Yes.
Sophia?
Yes.
And Zenda Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The adoption of Ordinance 491 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is resolution adoption of Ordinance 492.
This ordinance, if adopted, amends Chapter 882, Real Estate Taxation, to add Section 882.21, which will grant a payment in lieu of taxes to Blue Light 9 redevelopment project. Hollander Development is planning a multi-phase redevelopment of the former Kmart site at 200 Southwest Capitol Avenue into affordable housing, community amenities, and compatible commercial uses. This particular proposed pilot ordinance, Section 21, identified as Blue Light 9 redevelopment project, will include two 24-unit, 9% LIHTC buildings, the residential land, residential site amenities, and a solar photovoltaic array. A pilot is essentially a tax exemption for a housing development, with the developer sponsor being responsible for making an annual payment as compensation for services provided to it, such as police and fire protection and other essential services.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 492.
Support.
So moved and supported to adopt Resolution 492. Are there any public comments at this time? Yes, Reese Adkins.
Good evening, Reese Adkins, 24 Popular. I just want to re-indicate thank you to the city commissioners who worked on this, Ted, the gentleman that's here today, for doing this, and I'm very much in support because it is affordable housing, and from what I can hear and see, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful start to the city of Battle Creek to get affordable housing. The only concern I do have on this whole thing is that the homeless is going to try to destroy stuff like this, so that is something that needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments at this time? Yes, John Kennefick.
John Kinnivick, 234 South Avenue. This is in regards to the project of the Blue Light 9 redevelopment project, as which you're discussing right now. At the introduction of these ordinances at the last commission meeting, I went up to the city assistant city attorney, so no, I'm getting this wrong, pardon me, Ted Deering. And I asked him if there was money being used like the previous ones that were supposed to be developed in Battle Creek that had to do with federal dollars or state dollars. And his response basically was they're talking about tax credits. And so that started making me a little nervous about tax credits. So my basic question to this entire system is, are federal dollars going to be used on this project or state dollars going to be used on this project? Because we had Upholdings LLC that wanted to develop over by Van Buren in Washington, and they were going to spend about $23 million coming from the federal government. There was a tax percentage that if they built this unit, the people renting those places would only have to pay 6%, and the federal government would pick up the 94%. So I haven't seen any discussion of this here. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. Nothing has been mentioned. I wonder if this is another situation that has failed in the past. Example is HUD. Many years ago in the 50s, 1950s, they built many multi-apartment buildings, and they all ended up down the road being destroyed throughout the United States because they could not maintain them and it was cheaper to demolish them. I just hope we're not building another broken wheel that's failed in the past. I wish them all the success in the world. However, if it's going to cost taxpayer dollars, that's going to be a different story altogether. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Are there any commission comments? Seeing none, please vote on approval of adoption of Ordinance 492.
Madam Clerk, I'll need a verbal vote again.
Mayor Banky, are you able to vote?
Nope. Yes.
And Commissioner Zenda Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
The adoption of Ordinance 492 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is public comment regarding consent agenda and resolutions not on the consent agenda. It's limited to 3 minutes per individual. If you'd like to make a public comment regarding the consent agenda and resolutions not on the consent agenda, please raise your hand and we will acknowledge you to come forward to the podium. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. Please state your name and address before beginning your comment and indicate which resolution you're speaking to, and so that we can get back to you. Is there any public comment at this period of time? Yes, sir.
May I approach, Mayor?
Sure.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Joey Kedgebu. I'm here on Resolution 495 and 496. My address is 2207 Orchard Lake Road, Sylvan Lake, Michigan. And I'm here on behalf of the petitioners who are seeking special use permits for adult use marijuana retailers at 190 North 20th Street for Resolution 495 and 477 West Michigan Avenue for Resolution 496. If I may, Mayor, may I request a little bit of extra time since I'm dealing with multiple applications here? Not a ton, just...
I'm not opposed to it, but let's see how you progress in your first 3 minutes.
Sure.
And
Fair enough.
thanks.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. As you're aware, before you is a proposed resolution to approve a special use permit, to approve a special use permit for each local application for 190 North 20th Street and 477 West Michigan. Prior to today's meeting, there was a planning commission meeting held where a planning report was provided by Mr. Sullivan that overwhelmingly supported the approval of each of these petitions. Unfortunately, at that planning commission meeting, the commissioners voted 4-3 against the petitions that were submitted before them. And in that process, there were just a few things that I do want to discuss tonight that I feel are appropriate. Going back a few years, when the marijuana ordinances were introduced to the city of Battle Creek and they contemplated allowing marijuana facilities, it was a pretty significant process. There was multiple meetings held in this building. There was a lot of resident feedback. There were independent legal counsel that were retained. There were independent city planners that were retained. And ultimately, all of that feedback was taken in, processed, and produced what you have today as your regulatory and zoning ordinances for marijuana. In addition, just as general terms provide, per the city ordinance, there are certain guidelines and regulations that are in place for all special use permit applications. There's a checklist that's provided and certain criteria that must be met for each special use permit application. The planning commission, or the planning report, the planning community development report, overwhelmingly supported both of these sites and went through all of the different bullet points and the criteria and confirmed that each one of them met the setback requirements that are in the city ordinance. Now, when the process was initiated for marijuana facilities, there was a number of different sensitive uses that were identified and contemplated and deliberated during the process of making the ordinances. There were schools, there were parks, there were libraries, there were daycares, a number of different sensitive uses that were debated as should they have a certain distance requirements for marijuana facilities. Among those, the only ones that ended up getting approved and incorporated into the final ordinance were schools, libraries, and a separation distance requirement between marijuana facilities themselves. For these two applications, for 190, I'll go through them one by one. For 190 North 20th, the planning commissioners overwhelmingly made personal opinions and personal statements about how they felt. Can I stop this?
I'm going to allow you to continue on. I know that you have two applications.
Yeah.
I'll allow you to continue talking about both of those.
Okay.
But I would hope your objective will be to convince this board, beyond a reasonable doubt, that we meet the criteria. If you can do that, please continue on.
Indeed. Okay. So during the planning commission meeting, there were comments made that 190 was next door to a church and also too close to residential properties. 190 is in a commercial area. It is on a four-way intersection. It is surrounded by nothing but commercial activity. The properties that are residential are not impacted by this particular facility, and surrounding this particular facility, which has already been built out, it's been improved, it's had substantial investments made in it by my client, is just a vacant building right now. It's got additional vacant buildings next to it as well. The Planning Commission report shows that all of the criteria in there are satisfied. There was not one defective point in that Planning Commission report that would warrant a denial of this property. Now, with respect to the church piece, I can certainly understand and fully appreciate the moral dilemma and personal perspective of all of the Planning Commission members that they did not want a marijuana facility immediately next door to a church. I get that. I'm a church-going person myself. Unfortunately, I'm also an attorney who reads by the letter of the law. And churches are just not a protected, sensitive use. They're just not. That's how the law reads. That's how the special use permit application reads. That's how the zoning and regulatory ordinance reads. That's just not part of the application process and the criteria for a marijuana facility. So I feel as though that Planning Commission report provided by Mr. Sullivan identified every box that needed to be checked, and it was checked by the Planning Commission report. I feel for that reason that particular site should receive the approval. Now, on the property at 477 West Michigan, again, there were two items that were specifically identified by the Planning Commission. One item was, again, a residential issue. West Michigan is by no means a residential corridor. It consists largely of commercial activity. In and around this particular property, there are numerous vacant buildings within just 100 feet, commercial buildings, not residential, and this property has already been upgraded. It's been renovated. We have an applicant who's shown substantial commitment to the city and checked all the boxes, again, per the Planning Commission's report, per the Planning Department's report. Every criteria that's required in the special use permit application process was satisfied. There was not one defective item. And the Planning Commission report that was provided that night by Mr. Sullivan expressly stated that. Now, the other piece, and this was one that I think it was just a misinformation that was provided unintentionally. At that meeting, even though daycare facilities are also not part of the sensitive uses that are identified in the zoning ordinance, there was a commission member who stated that a daycare was immediately next door. We did our diligence after that meeting. I was not in a position to respond to that because I had not investigated daycares because it's not part of the ordinance. The facility next door is actually the adult, if you bear with me, I have it written down, the adult Here you go. The Adult Choices Learning Center for Adult Education Life Skills. It is not a daycare. I have contacted that facility. I've spoke with the staff. They have expressly told me they do not provide any daycare services whatsoever, and they are not a licensed daycare facility on file with the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. The facility operates as and in the name itself, it says Alternative Choices Learning Center for Adult Education Life Skills. It is a special needs facility that allows special needs persons to integrate a little better into society and teach them life skills. It has no daycare services. There's no children present there. And that was one of the bases for the denial. That was an overwhelming basis for denial of that application. And I just felt as though that was inappropriate. Overall, the special use permit application process has been in place for some time in the city of Battle Creek. It sets standards that need to be followed, and they create a certain structure. And when personal opinions and moral dilemmas start to get implemented into decision-making processes, it kind of compromises everything that the city has built. It's compromised those 3 years or a couple years of adopting these marijuana regulatory and licensing ordinances, and it undermines the entire process going forward. It would give any commission the opportunity to simply have individuals who are on the commissions make their own unilateral decisions based on their own personal dilemma, and I just don't think that's at the spirit of the ordinance. I think there was a very compelling, very accurate report submitted by the planning director, and I just feel like the planning commission let their personal opinions and moral dilemma with these properties take precedent over established guidelines at the city level. And I just felt as though that was problematic, and I wanted to be here today to kind of express my concerns just from an overarching theme in terms of how the city processes these applications, not just in my instance, but overall going forward. I'm available to answer any questions if needed, and again, I appreciate you all giving me the time to speak tonight. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Blood.
Well, sir, I'd like to perhaps do this at a more appropriate time when we get to 495, 496. And under those, if that will be more appropriate rather than during public comment, so we can move that along and then come back to this. But I do appreciate you giving him more time because that really helped give me more information that I needed since I wasn't there at that meeting. Would that be more appropriate to wait until we get to those?
I'm going to defer to the city attorney on that question.
It might, I mean, I think it's fine if you would like to allow her to do that, Mayor, and maybe to have it more contemporaneous when the commission is considering it, since there's 5 applications here. It's up to you, though, Your Honor.
I have no problem doing that.
Okay, I'll defer my questions until we get there, and if you don't mind staying around, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other commission comments?
My comment would go right after Kristen's, so.
Thank you very much. Question I have
Yes,
is,
Mr. Mayor.
try to convince me that allowing the medical or provisional marijuana license on the 20th Street location isn't going to change the character of that neighborhood.
So I don't believe it's going to change the character of that neighborhood. I drove by that site today, Mr. Mayor, and currently that site is sitting on a 4-corner commercial intersection. Across the street is Walters Plumbing. Across the street on the other corner is a used car dealership. Across the street on the other corner is a Taylor and Penny Pincher's grocery. And then there are 2 or 3 vacant buildings that I was able to count within only 100 feet, a couple hundred feet of this particular facility. What we're talking about here is a corner that has been built out. The asphalt has been redone. The building has been refaced. The facade has been entirely torn out. This was an automotive garage before my clients took it over. They completely renovated that entire property. And now what we're talking about is potentially denying this particular site from operating, paying licensing fees, contributing to the local economy, hiring new jobs, and please keep in mind, the marijuana industry is one of the highest paying industries right now. Each facility provides at least 10 to 15 new jobs in the city of Battle Creek. And that doesn't even speak to the additional $56,000 that the city of Battle Creek received last week per location, per marijuana facility from the state's excise tax fund. The building has been vacant for approximately 5 years now, I believe, 5. It's been fully renovated. It has a surveillance system that not only will service its own facility, but services all of the around properties, because that's what's required of the state. I myself have been in facilities for licensees where I've had cops visit because they're investigating crimes at neighboring properties, and they needed to utilize our camera services because they are that state of the art. They capture real time, 30 days of service, recording time. They have zoom in features. They have to have certain resolutions on each of these cameras that you're not going to find at other facilities. In addition to that, landscaping will be continuously maintained. The property itself has upgraded lighting that would be beneficial to the entire area in the evening, and it will just be an asset to this area. You're driving traffic to an area that I just mentioned has 3 vacant buildings right now. We're looking at investing in 1 out of the 4, technically with ours, 4 vacant buildings, and hopefully attracting more traffic that makes this area a more enviable destination for additional potential business owners to come in and say, hey, you know what, if these guys did it, maybe we should do it. Maybe the traffic that they're generating will give us the opportunity to be a beneficial bystander of what they've done. You know, if you build it, they will come, right? You've got multiple different facilities, different buildings that are sitting there vacant in dilapidated condition, and we're willing to be the first. We're willing to be a pioneer in that area. And even the existing facilities that are there, the ones that I just mentioned, Walters, the used car lot, the Taylor, the Penny Pinchers, none of them have received any upgrades in years. That building that we've renovated, I can tell you if you drive by that facility, Mr. Mayor, it is the nicest building on that corner. It's not something that we've skimped on. It's something that we believe is an asset to the community. It's something that with the ability to operate will just continue to be an asset to the community. If we can provide those 10 or 15 jobs that are not currently available, if we can provide those licensing fees that can be utilized by the city for any other desired purpose that they have. I just don't see, especially when weighing the alternative of keeping the building vacant versus having it operate and having it generate tax dollars and generate jobs and create traffic for those other businesses that may be struggling at this point in time, I don't see how that alternative is better than not having this property operate.
One more question. You do own the property currently, right?
Me personally, no.
You're speaking for your client?
My client, yes.
Right. Why didn't you apply for the special use permit before you purchased the property?
So he purchased it years ago. He purchased it several years ago. This property did not previously require special use permits. When this property was only zoned for medical marijuana, the zoning ordinance changed, I believe, in late 2020. It changed. COVID hit. There was a bunch of delays. And I don't know how familiar you are with the overall marijuana market, Mr. Mayor, but the last year and a half has been a significant struggle. And if you read some of the more recent articles, people were extremely gun shy after having made these initial investments. With continuing to pump money into this industry, there was a shortage of marijuana product available. There were delays at the state level due to COVID. There were issues with staffing. There was just a plethora of issues that I can point to that prevented us from moving forward at an earlier date and time. What I can commit to is, if this special use permit is granted, there will be a step 1 and step 2 fully licensed applications submitted within days of when this application gets approved. It's a fair question.
Thank you. Are there any other? Commissioner Herring.
Thank you, sir. So you keep speaking about the traffic. As someone who is from Battle Creek, my concern is the traffic on that corner. That is a high-traffic, congested intersection. I take that route twice a day, sometimes more than that. How many parking spaces are allotted for your property, or the property that you represent?
On this particular property, I believe we are required to have, don't quote me on this, I don't have that information from me. I think it's 9, and we have 14 or 15 on this particular property. We have adequate parking per the city code, and we believe it's going to be adequate for operational purposes too.
Okay, have you looked into like any of the traffic concerns for that area? Because even with the vacant buildings that are going on there, that is a high accident intersection in this city, just so you know that. I wasn't sure if you had looked into that.
You know, honestly, I have not. That's kind of out of the traffic studies and stuff like that is not in my legal department of what I do. Okay. And I didn't do the underlying application, so I don't know the answer to that. But it's a fair question again. I believe that we will be able to properly maintain traffic and to a point where it won't be a disturbance to any of the neighboring communities or traffic volume going in and out of there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments by the commission at this time? Seeing none, you've spoken on both of yours. We're going to move those to the regular portion of the meeting.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Are there any other public comments about the remaining portion of our meeting, which would be the consent agenda and resolutions not on the consent agenda? Yes, sir.
Armand Bondia, 340 East Beaver Road, Building C, Suite 145, Troy, Michigan 48083. On behalf of HDMD LLC, it's item number 499 on the non-consent agenda. And I would reiterate the exact same issues that my colleague, Mr. Keshbu, described earlier regarding the public, the property department body's findings on their basis for determination for special land use, section 128105C. And I would also like to distinguish between the requirements of special land use and the technical requirements of site plan review, which I think you alluded to earlier when you asked about parking. Really a technical issue versus slightly more subjective situation. However, with respect to my client's application here today, my client is a licensed, city licensed, state licensed medical marijuana facility at this location that is, again, licensed by the city, licensed by the state, effectively operational, has a certificate of occupancy. And that is to say that by way of having that C of O, they've met all their site plan requirements, including parking, and all of that, again, it has been met in light of the C of O. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the certificate of occupancy. In this case, there are no proposed amendments to the site plan. There is a request for an adult use retail facility approval here today, special land use for that. However, the considerations that go along with that, I think somewhat unsimilar to some of the other applicants. For example, is it consistent with the use and intent of the purpose of the zoning? Of course, I mean, that's something that is, you need to think about. However, there's already a dispensary there, right? So when you consider some of the special land use requirements with respect to this application, you have to consider the fact that this is a licensed and operating facility at this point. Some of these things don't apply the same way. That being said, to sum up, I would hope that we do have additional time to address specifically any questions you might have and these specific requirements with the specific site during the regular portion of the meeting. Is that something we're going to do?
I'll give you an option. I would assume the commission would like to have you also taken to the regular portion of our meeting. But it's very important that you address, more than even the previous participant, the basis for determination, because I think you've got a higher problem on your property than the other participant. So address the basis for determination so that we're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you meet those bases.
And to clarify, my understanding of the basis for the Planning Commission determination was primarily parking, which is again this SPR issue, drainage.
I'm not here to do that. If you don't know what the basis for determination is, maybe we should delay yours to another time.
Different members of the Planning Commission gave different reasons. For example, I believe your reason was whether the same reason you asked, the same question you asked him, whether it fits into the neighborhood. And what I would say to that specifically is that it's already a medical marijuana facility, a licensed facility.
All right, we're going to move you to the next portion of our meeting after the consent agenda.
Sounds good.
So you'll have another opportunity to speak there.
Even better.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time? Yes, Reese.
Good evening. Reese Atkins, 24 Popular. 495, 496, 497, 499. It's interesting that these are actually coming up today because just about a month ago I spoke on some of these buildings. They do look good, but one of the things that we need to look at in these neighborhoods is, yeah, they're adult facilities, but how many children walk by these and are going to walk into these facilities not knowing what they are? We do need to take that into consideration because some of these do have schools nearby where kids would be walking out. The other thing I'm going to speak on is 498, which is the old Kmart parking lot again. Glad to see it, but my concern with that is right there behind the share center. Hoping that the homeless don't decide to come over and start wrecking some of the playground equipment, some of the other stuff coming up. So that needs to be thought of maybe putting, this in, not saying don't put it in, but put it in under a lock standpoint to where the homeless can't come in and just use it as a sleeping place, use it as a place to wreck, to destroy, because once they spend the money to do this, which is a good thing, we don't want it ruined within a month. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Yes, John.
John Kennefic, 234 South Avenue. I got 3 minutes to discuss 6 resolutions. How much time do you think I can do it in? I'm going to block the first ones in Resolution 495, 496, 497, and 499. These are all the medical marijuana ones. Excuse me, the recreational marijuana ones. I have no problem with any of these going into place. They are businesses and they are there to make a profit. I find it interesting, though, that prior to any of this going on, you'd normally go to jail if you had marijuana, and I was kind of curious how much money the state spent on putting people in prisons for the use of marijuana, and that's all turned around. Now, we know the application of these 4 resolutions is $5,000. We also know that it's an annual fee of $5,000 a year. So that's an income stream of extra money coming in just for these 4 medical marijuana and recreational marijuana facilities. I find that interesting because why don't we take that money and start reducing the amount of money to the taxpayers of Battle Creek? You're getting income here, why don't we reduce it somewhere else? Next one, Resolution 500. I'm going under the concept that it's the storage facility that's going to be built next to the theater on Helmer Road across from Myers on Columbia and Helmer. It apparently is where they're going to spend approximately 18% of the state funding to construct this building. The 82% is spent by the city of Battle Creek. There's going to be a cost savings in transport, not going all the way to River Road. So are the citizens, when they get this cost savings, going to get a reduction in their costs? I doubt it. And finally, Resolution 501. We know that the American Rescue Plan gave a lot of money to a lot of nonprofits, and one of those was New Level Sports Ministries. And now they're back for block grant dollars of $420,000 for a youth village learning center. Is that part of what the government of Battle Creek is supposed to do? Is that part of the 5 essential services? It's a good move on your part to vote this in because you got a lot of people that will definitely vote you back in after you raid the public treasury. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Seeing none, call for a vote on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any commission comments? Seeing none, would you please vote on the consent agenda?
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
The consent agenda has been approved.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. I would ask for like a 5-minute recess. I think that we're going into a part of our meeting that could be a little lengthy, and so I know Commissioner Wilson has some technical issues, and so maybe if we can get those addressed before we go into the rest of our meeting. Is that an appropriate request to be made?
I think we can accommodate that, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
We'll take a break to 8:10. It is 8:10, so once ever all the commissioners get to their seat, we'll sit down.
Did you get in?
Okay, Madam Clerk, we're at Resolution 495, correct?
Yes. The petitioner, 190 North 20th Street Incorporated, is applying for a special use to allow for an adult-use marijuana retail establishment at 190 North 20th Street, located in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District. Adult-use marijuana retailers are allowed special uses in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District. Adult-use marijuana retailer establishments must meet 1,000-foot distance requirements from other retailers, provisioning centers and micro-businesses, and schools and libraries open to the public. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that it meets all of the requirements for the zoning district and the standards specifically applicable to adult-use marijuana retailer establishments, including meeting the 1,000-foot distance bugger requirement. At the August 24, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the request under the special use permit criteria outlined in section 1281.05 of the zoning code, and by a 4-3 vote did not recommend the approval of the request. If approved, this resolution authorizes a special use permit to allow for an adult use marijuana retail establishment located at 190 North 20th Street with the conditions contained within the resolution.
I move for the approval of Resolution 495.
Support.
So moved and supported to approve Resolution 495. I'll go to the applicant again. Are there any other comments you want to make on this?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Blood.
Thank you, sir. So, a few things. One, I was perusing the staff report, and I believe that I also see that staff determined, based on looking at our master plan, going through all of the hoops and dotting the T's and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, that this structure meets everything that they would deem necessary for this special use permit. And so I see that. I also drive that location often, and I have concerns with the buildings that are unoccupied and painted and not utilized. And so I appreciate facilities coming in and wanting to move in and do business. So I appreciate that and looking at that. I concur with you in reading the marijuana things coming from the state, that although people have their own individual bias and we want to prevent certain things from being close to our churches or proposed child cares or things like that, after a lot of deliberation by people who get paid much more than we do, they have set certain regulations in place that it looks as though your business has met. Would you concur that that's correct? Because that's basically...
I completely agree with that, yes. Everything you've said is accurate.
Okay. And so I do have a comment in specific in regards to your applicant, because you're both 495 and 496. Is that accurate?
Yes, I'm technically 497, but that one received a recommendation of approval, so I haven't commented on that one, so.
Okay,
but
so
yes.
you're also that one. So I also drive by 477 West Michigan often, and that one is located more near Voces and some other things down there. So as you can see in the pictures, landscaping hasn't been very well maintained down there when it's been vacant. So I would encourage constant maintenance and constant oversight, even as you're waiting for these things to happen, because it really does demonstrate the investment into the area. And I know you're just the representation, but you'll take this back to your clients, which is awesome. So the investment should be ongoing, not just in the waiting period. So I would encourage that investment constantly. Being that I couldn't find anything here beyond some potential personal bias of my own or somebody else's, you've checked all the boxes and you've done everything that your clients have done, everything that we have asked them and the state have asked them to do. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for adding the information we needed, and I appreciate your time in that.
I appreciate your comments, and if I
Okay,
may
sir,
address...
Sir.
Oh, I can't talk?
No, she had a question for you.
Oh.
She's made a comment, so she's thanking you.
Oh.
And I'm going to say thank you, Commissioner, and then we'll go to another commissioner.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That works, that's okay.
Are
Thank
there
you.
any other
Thank you,
comments by
Commissioner
the
Black.
commission? Any questions? I have a question. Do you know if there's been a stormwater retention plan put forth on this property?
What, 190?
We're talking 495, so
495,
it's 190 North 20th.
I don't, but my assumption would be yes, because it was issued a certificate of occupancy. I don't believe that would be issued without that, if it was required.
All right, I need to get a clarification on that.
Yeah, Mayor, and certainly planning staff can comment as well, but typically as part of the administrative approval, that review would have been completed by staff.
I'm sorry, Ted, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to say, typically as part of our administrative approval of an application such as this, that type of thing, stormwater review, would have been completed by staff. It was. Yeah, and planning staff is indicating that yes, it was reviewed and approved by staff.
Thank you.
All right, do you know if the stormwater plan's attached to the resolution?
I doubt that it would be in this case, just simply because it wasn't germane to the particular request.
Is that a question for me, Mr. Mayor?
No.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up. They said it was attached to the resolution.
The stormwater management plan?
Right.
No, I do not believe that that would be attached to the resolution. I'm going to ask Marcy to address that.
Site plan approval and those requirements that are conducted and reviewed by both planning and our Department of Public Works are done administratively, and so those would have been done prior at the initial time of application back in the 2019 period of time. The stormwater would have been approved by our Department of Planning or Department of Public Works.
So they do have a stormwater retention plan in place for this property?
So everything relative to site plan review, which would include a variety of things such as landscaping and parking, setback requirements, traffic flow, Department of Public Works. It was approved on July 24th, 2019 by our Department of Public Works. They reviewed the infrastructure, they reviewed the traffic review, they did a survey review, and also the stormwater review. All were approved on that date.
Just out of curiosity, where's the stormwater on that property? Where's it collected at?
I did not bring that information because it's not relevant to the special use approval, but that is certainly something that we can ask our Department of Public Works to provide to ensure that it meets stormwater requirements.
Aren't all properties supposed to have a stormwater retention plan?
I would defer to the Department of Public Works Director, Carl Fetters, to answer that, considering it's his department that does that review and approval.
So I'm not prepared to answer questions on this specific one, but my staff, when a site plan comes down, reviews it against the ordinance and our rules. If the site is small enough and the improvements meet the criteria for where a review is not necessary, that is sometimes the case. I'm not sure if that was the case here, but I trust that my staff reviewed it against the rules that we have, and whatever recommendation they put forth during the administrative review was appropriate. And I can always look that up I was actually looking it up as you were talking, so.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any other questions on Resolution 495?
I have one. Is the owner of the property, are they residents of Battle Creek?
They are not.
Thank
So I have a clarifying question, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
You were asking about stormwater retention plan. Are you asking how they capture their stormwater and then utilize it, or how it is captured as it runs off the building and parking lot?
Correct, the latter.
Okay, so previously, when there was a previous site there, were there also stormwater plans that were in effect? Because I look at these pictures of before and after, and frankly, it looks a lot better than it did, but I don't know that that was something that was there previously.
I don't know either.
Oh, okay. So when I look at this and review the site plan review notes, it looks as though, it talks about topography, existing and proposed, contours, spot elevations sufficient to determine the topography of the site. So it looks like the grading and everything, and it says indicating direction and drainage of stormwater calculations. And it says not applicable. Proposed site work does not alter the grading. So the work that was done has not altered the grading, so therefore they did not have to do anything to sufficiently change what happened there for the stormwater. So I think what was submitted and what we've had available would be sufficient for what's in place, just to help you since you didn't find it before.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Are we prepared to vote now? Commissioner Sophia.
Thank you, Mayor. As I was looking at the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting, was there any resident input? I understand that there may not be city residents directly adjacent, but were there notifications sent to other neighbors, and what did they have to add to the conversation?
So the ordinance requires that we send notification within a 300-foot buffer to a project site. And so those notices were sent per the ordinance requirements. And at the Planning Commission meeting, there were no public comments and no one present to make public comments, either in support or lack of support for the project.
Thank you.
Any other commission comments at this time?
And the vote at the commission meeting was 4 votes against and 3 for, correct?
Correct. Okay, I'm still opposed, and I will be voting no on this. I just want to make sure everyone knows. And I really feel that we're going to be changing the character of the neighborhood. And I know churches are not one of the items that are prohibited when it comes to special use permits. Churches have to apply for a special use permit to come into a community or come into neighborhoods in our city of Battle Creek. And I really am struggling with the fact that I feel it's going to be a real burden on this church. Are there any other comments by the commission? Seeing none, would you please vote on Resolution 495? Resolution 495 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 496. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
The petitioner, 477 West Michigan Incorporated, is applying for a special use to allow for an adult-use marijuana retailer establishment at 477 West Michigan Avenue, located in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District. Adult-use marijuana retailers are allowed special uses in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that it meets all of the requirements for the zoning district and the standards specifically applicable to adult-use marijuana retailer establishments, including meeting the 1,000-foot distance buffer requirement. At the August 24, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the request under the special use permit criteria outlined in Section 1281.05 of the zoning code, and by a 4-3 vote did not recommend the approval of the request. If approved, this resolution authorizes a special use permit to allow for an adult-use marijuana retailer establishment located at 477 West Michigan Avenue with the conditions contained within the resolution.
I move for the approval of Resolution 496.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve Resolution 496. Petitioner, go ahead.
I think the prior comments I had were all I had for this, Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor.
All right, no problem. Commissioner Bonica.
Thank you, sir. So I have a question, and I think it would go to you, Ted. What is the allotted distance from a daycare that a facility has to have?
Yeah, so for this particular type of license, there is no required maximum or minimum distance from a daycare facility.
Okay, so my concern with this one is everyone is talking about the facility right there next door. Well, 3 lots over, there is a daycare and a youth program right there at the intersection. This is the one across from the old Harley building, correct? On Michigan Avenue. So my concern with the work that is being done in that neighborhood, I don't feel like this is a good fit for that neighborhood. And I'd just like to put that on record. I will not be in support of this one for that reason alone.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commission comments at this time? All right, once again, I'll be voting no on this one. I did visit the Alternative Choices and their consumers. They have 80 individuals that they help with life learning skills. A lot of the individuals are from Battle Creek, but a majority of them come from out county area. They're bused into Battle Creek on a daily basis. This business is a very thriving business, and I certainly feel that this will change the character of the neighborhood. Are there any other commission comments at this time? If not, please vote on the approval of Resolution 496. Resolution 496 has been defeated. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 497, Madam Clerk. And before we go on to this, I will need another commissioner to move for support of this. Commissioner Lance will be not voting on this. So Commissioner Sophia will do that. Thank you.
Establishment in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District for the property located at 306 West Columbia Avenue. Adult use marijuana retailers are allowed special uses in the T3 Neighborhood Commercial District. At the August 24, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the request under the special use permit criteria outlined in Section 1281.05 of the Zoning Code and recommended the approval of the request. If approved, this resolution authorizes a special use permit to allow for an adult-use marijuana retail establishment located at 306 West Columbia Avenue with the conditions contained within the resolution.
I move for the approval of Resolution 497.
Support.
Been moved and supported to approve Resolution 497. Is this your account?
This one is mine,
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
go ahead.
So this facility, during the Planning Commission meeting, actually received a recommendation of approval. There were no issues with any sensitive uses. Again, The property has been fully built out. It's ready to be operational. It's just a matter of submitting the Step 1 and Step 2 licensing. It meets all of the buffer and setback requirements that are in the ordinance. It's nowhere near a school, an active library, or any other marijuana facility. There are no other concerns with respect to sensitive uses that have been discussed here tonight or at the prior planning commission that are not part of the ordinance. It received a recommendation of approval at the planning commission level, and I would just respectfully request that that same recommendation be adopted for tonight and the resolution be approved.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Are there any other commission comments at this time? Seeing none, would you please vote on Resolution 497? Resolution 497 has been approved.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 498. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
The Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 7, 2022, and after due consideration, recommended that the Battle Creek City Commission approve a petition from Matt Hollander, Hollander Development, requesting a special use permit to allow a new child care center in a T3 neighborhood commercial district located on the parcel at 200 Capitol Avenue Southwest, as permitted by special use under the Planning and Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 1240, Section 1240.13 in the Zoning Code. By approval of this resolution, the Battle Creek City Commission, having given its considerations to all information presented to it relating to said petition, adopts the finding and recommendations as set out in the report and supplemented by findings set forth on the record of this date, which will be attached hereto, and approves special use permit S11-2022 for a new child care center at 200 Capitol Avenue Southwest with the conditions and/or restrictions set forth in this resolution.
I move for the approval of Resolution 498.
Support.
So moved and supported to approve Resolution 498. Are there any comments or questions by the commission? Hearing none, would you please vote on Resolution 498? Resolution 498 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 499. Madam Clerk.
The petitioner, Bud Brothers Provisioning Battle Creek LLC, is applying for a special use permit for an adult use marijuana establishment in the T3 neighborhood commercial district for the property located at 537 West Columbia Avenue. Adult use marijuana retailers are allowed special uses in the T3 neighborhood commercial district. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that it meets all of the requirements for the zoning district and the standards specifically applicable to adult use marijuana retailer establishments, including meeting the 1,000-foot distance buffer requirement. At the September 7, 2022 Planning Commission special meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the request under the special use permit criteria outlined in Section 1281.05 of the Zoning Code, and by a 3-3 vote did not recommend the approval of the request. If approved, this resolution authorizes a special use permit to allow for an adult use marijuana retail establishment located at 537 West Columbia Avenue with the conditions contained within the resolution.
I move for the approval of Resolution 499.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve Resolution 499. You guys are ready. All right.
We're ready.
Who's speaking first? The petitioner? All right.
I can speak first.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to address a couple concerns from the previous.
First, your name for the record.
I'm sorry. My name is Mohammed Dakrub. I own the building on 537 West Columbia, and I represent HDMD.
Thank you.
Yep. So from the previous meeting, we had three main concerns, I believe, that caused the denial, and I'm going to address all three. First was the storm drain issue. I built the building about 2 years ago. It's been complete. So it's gone through many storms. We've had no leaks, and when I did build the building, I did have plans. I submitted them to the city. They were reviewed. They were approved. And as I was building, it was inspected. And I did not make any moves before it was inspected. I got green stickers, and it met everything. So to answer the storm drain issue, there is no issue there, and it meets everything that the city had put forth, and I addressed all the concerns. The next concern was the parking. I have a small parking lot back there. I have done everything humanly possible to fix this problem. Dr. Wenzel next door is a chiropractor. I've offered him 4 times the amount of the property behind me to cash him out on it, and he would not answer my request. I dropped off signed purchase agreements for this property. I even offered to pave the lot and lease it back from him, and he just won't answer my request. So I went a step further. I talked to the businesses around me. The Papa John's right to the right of me is owned by a group of people, one of which is Mr. Baja. They own 190 Papa John's. They also expressed with me that their site plans were approved recently to knock down the building, and they bought the house behind them to move the building back and have ample parking, which he gave me access to whatever I need. For my employees, whatever I need, there's a few parking spots they would be willing to have, and we're getting a lease agreement signed right now. Furthermore, across the street at One Nation, his name is Steve that owns that building, and I got permission from him as well to use his parking lot as needed. I'd rather use the Papa John's one because so they don't have to cross Columbia, but I have both those options readily available. But furthermore, I already met all the requirements from the ordinance. I was required to get a bike rack because the ordinance said if I have X amount of parking or X amount of bike racks, it counts as 1 parking spot. So it was approved, it was submitted, it was inspected, and it was done. The last thing that everybody, or the concern from the last meeting was the character of the neighborhood. And I think it would just be enhanced. The reason why I think that is because how much money I put into the building and how beautiful it looks. Now, not everybody might think that, but I definitely did it. Before I was there, it was a tattoo parlor. And we had concerns of children in the area and what would happen, if they walk into it. First of all, I own other stores as well, so I'm very familiar with this business. The state and the city require a buzzer to go through the door. So even if a child did walk in for some reason, he would be stopped right at the reception area, and we would not let them in. But I haven't seen any kids in that area, and I hope they're not walking down Columbia Avenue as it is, because it's a really busy intersection. And I've talked to everybody around me already, and I will show you emails of the community eager for me to open. The last point I want to make is we're already granted SLU. I already got the C of O, and I can open tomorrow morning and serve medical. I already paid my fee with the city for the business license. All I'm asking for is to give me the adult use. I can already open medical, but I can't sustain a good business if I don't have the right hand. I need the adult use as well. So instead of me just opening and failing, I stand before you, please, asking you guys one more time just to get this approved for me so I can have the adult use and continue to do work in Battle Creek. I have bought houses in Battle Creek. I have renovated them. I have flipped them. I'm from Detroit, but I'm still doing a lot of work in Battle Creek. So if you guys please could consider this and just help me get this done, it'd be great.
Okay. Counselor, are you going to speak at all?
Sure. Just to reiterate that some of the justification at the Planning Commission hearing was really related to SPR and not SLU. SLU are those 8 elements in the section previously mentioned. Only one of the issues was with respect to SLU, and the response to that essentially is that it's already an operating, it's a licensed facility that can be operational. So the only addition here is an adult use license of who we can sell to, not necessarily that it can be a marijuana facility or not. That's really not the question here. So please and thank you.
Could you clarify how many additional parking spots will be on, is it Papa John's, did you say?
Yeah, well, Papa John's does his renovation. He has like 5 of them right there for me that I'd be able to use. To be honest with you, they didn't specify them out. They said whatever I need, because my business is going to help their business.
At some point in time, right.
Yeah.
That is a given.
Absolutely, and they're eager for me to open.
All right. The concern that the Planning Commission had is there were only 5 spots, and are you going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 employees?
I'm going to have 5 employees. I definitely appreciate the concern. If you know Dr. Wenzel himself, let him know I'm ready. They're not budging, and the Planning Commission approved the current parking spots. So I appreciate the concern, and if I can get more parking spots, it would only help my business. But I just need to open at this point.
And we would make arrangements to shuttle or have our employees park elsewhere and be brought in to the facility, obviously to use the parking spot for customers and patients.
Okay. Are there any commission comments at this time or questions? Commissioner Sophia.
Thank you, Mayor. While I may disagree with your contention that it is harmonious with the neighborhood and some of the other issues that the Planning Commission brought up during the consideration of this. I will be willing to vote for this tonight because you already have the medical approval. And when we were discussing this, whenever, I don't even remember the year that it was brought up, but when we approved the medical licenses, one of the things that I had talked about at that time was the need to make sure that, seeing that recreational was coming down the road, making sure that we were setting up an even playing field. So if the commission has already approved you for medical, I don't feel like I can tell you you can't do recreational. So I'm willing to support your application tonight, but I don't necessarily agree that it's harmonious.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Men, wait tight, all right? Any other commission comments at this time? Once again, I'll be voting no on this. I just feel that it's a safety hazard, only having 5 spots on your property. One's reserved for handicap. If you reach an agreement and you're able to access some additional parking spots, I'll be more than willing to reconsider it, but at this period of time, that's one of the reasons. I really am concerned about safety on Columbia Avenue. So, thank you. Any other comments?
Mayor, can I, if I might, thank you. I'm curious about business flow. So from a parking perspective, typically how many customers would you have at any given time?
It's really all depending. There's no way to gauge it. With so many dispensaries already in the surrounding area, you know, if I didn't already invest into this 2 years ago, I wouldn't have. The market here is absolutely flooded, but I'm already committed, so I need to open the business. So to answer your question, I'm going to have 5 registers for my 5 parking spots. My customer turnaround time is going to be extremely low. And just to further respectfully ask, or I just want to comment on, you said the safety of the parking spots. You know, I would think the ordinance would have been written differently. I met the ordinance, I asked the Planning Commission before I started construction, and even before I bought the property, I made it a contingency that I got the approval from the state of Battle Creek before I bought the property. So I think if it was a safety issue, Mayor, then maybe it should be reflected in the ordinance, because I would have followed it. All I did was follow the exact rules, and I got everything inspected, I got green stickers, I can open tomorrow. I just need the adult use, please.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other commission comments at this time? Commissioner Blood.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for reiterating that. There are a lot of hoops that you have to jump through to open a business, and you've been inspected, and you have done everything you've needed to do. And I appreciate the staff doing what they needed to do to make sure that things were up to par and bringing us things that are ready to be approved and ready to have our support. And I trust the staff that has done this work. And so I appreciate that was brought, their approval, and you reiterating as a business owner everything you have done and how you've reached out, hearing problems and saying, okay, I will try. I will go and talk to my neighbors. I will go and talk to the community and start seeing what I can do rather than just stomping your feet. You went out there and engaged around the issues themselves. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other commission comments at this time? Seeing none, please vote on Resolution 499. Resolution 499 has been approved. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 400. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
500.
500, sorry.
There is an existing state highway maintenance contract between the city and the Michigan Department of Transportation where the city maintains certain designated sections of state trunkline highways that includes the placing of chemicals such as salt upon those highways. The chemicals must be properly maintained and stored, and MDOT has determined that it is economically and administratively sound to have such chemicals maintained and stored in a storage facility to be built by the city. If approved, this resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into the attached chemical storage facility contract with MDOT for sharing cost of construction of a facility that is to be built at 15275 South Helmer Road in Battle Creek.
Move for the approval of Resolution 500.
Support.
So moved and supported to approve Resolution 500. Are there any commission comments, questions, or clarifications? Commissioner Blood.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think this might be up Carl Fetter's department, maybe? Yes, no? I just have a quick question, I promise. So we will be investing in this facility to build it. What will the cost savings be per year once it's actually moved and at that location?
So we wouldn't be able to really calculate that, but it will be, so, you know, all of our trucks right now go to River Road, our wastewater treatment plant facility, for all the different districts. And so I don't know if we've calculated a savings because we're centrally locating the facility now, but there will certainly be efficiencies that happen in our snow removal operation.
Okay, so when, just making sure I clarify, so there was no way to look at mileage driven and saved by centrally locating it and kind of looking at the numbers. I know you're not going to be able to project what gas is going to look like in 2 years.
So we have AVL, and we probably could spend a fair amount of time trying to figure out what that number is. But just the fact that it's centrally located for all of, you know, where our trucks are going. If you look at our AVL system during any snow event, you'll see a steady stream of trucks going to River Road, which is on the far west side of the city. This is, we certainly can look into that, but I'm not sure I could put a dollar figure on it.
Okay, and then I couldn't.
I just guess I asked one other thing. Our current facility is past its useful life and will be used for our compost facility. So we're kind of being evicted from there as well.
Okay, so you're facing eviction from the compost. Got it. All right, so, and the other thing I couldn't find, and perhaps one of my colleagues can help me, it looks like there's an estimated cost of $2 million. What is the MDOT's portion of that?
So MDOT will pay for 18%.
So they're going to pay for 18%?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, okay. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commission comments at this time? Seeing none, would you please vote on Resolution 500? Resolution 500 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 501. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
The City of Battle Creek, in its 2020 5-year consolidated plan, established 6 strategic priorities and 22 strategic objectives to govern the use of CDBG funding and proposed a slate of projects over 5 years that aligned with those priorities. One of those projects, the Youth Village Learning Center, identified as having one of the highest strategic values, will provide early childhood development services, childcare, and other youth learning activities. If approved, this resolution authorized the city manager to execute a contract between City of Battle Creek and New Level Sports Ministries for the development of the Youth Village Learning Center located on the 400 block of Van Buren Street, Battle Creek, Michigan, in the not-to-exceed amount of $420,000. New Level Sports Ministries shall use community development block grant funds, along with resources from other funders, to construct the Youth Learning Center, whose purpose will be to provide said services to predominantly low and moderate income families in Battle Creek.
Move for the approval of Resolution 501.
Support.
It's moved and supported to approve Resolution 501. Are there any comments by the commission or clarifications or questions? Commissioner Lenore Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had like a clarifying question. There's questions around, was this part of the original request, was it not? Can you kind of talk to that, just to clarify that for folks?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner, I didn't quite catch the full question.
Yes, when it came to this particular resolution, there was questions around whether or not this was a part of the original request or not. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, I think you're asking, was this part of the original ARPA request to the city? Is that what you're
Correct.
asking? Yeah, okay. So these are two separate things. This was not part of the original ARPA request to the city, although the portion of ARPA dollars that is going to New Level Sports is going to support this particular project. This happens to be a use of our community development block grant dollars that was determined, and I know that Chris Lucier is here and can speak to the time frame of this particular recommendation, and I believe there are commissioners that have those questions as well. But we're using block grant dollars which will supplement the ARPA investment in this particular project.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to clarify for the public.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. This might be a question for Chris, and it's a process one. I can appreciate the how the process that we go by with the community development block grants and the community plan, and that it's very arduous and it's big, and for those of us who are temporary employees, who are part-time employees as commissioners, for us to get our arms around the whole thing is a little bit challenging, right? So to understand in little pockets what goes on, I actually had to call Chris earlier today to just help me understand all of the different parts, and I really appreciated him going through those with me. I think that context changes, and the process by which we go about deciding about allocations for these projects needs to mirror current context, and it feels as though there might be more we could do to make a more transparent, more inclusive process for decision-making. I worry not only about the optics of providing yet more funds for a very needed project, but there are other very needed projects out there that I'm not sure had the same advantage of being able to participate in a process that would allow them access to resources as well. And so I don't know that I have the answer to that, but I'm wondering if Chris could talk a little bit about that delay in what happens from when they make the decisions, who makes those decisions, how do people know about the actual resources, and what are we doing moving forward to make sure that we're we're more aligned with our values of being equitable in our approach, because I know that's the intent. So, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure. So this project was originally programmed as a part of the creation of the city's 5-year consolidated plans. That planning process started in 2019 and was completed with a city commission vote in 2020, May of 2020. And as a part of that, we lay out a 5-year budget. So for CDBG, you're required to submit a 5-year plan for how you spend your funds. And we did create the community development, or the consolidated plan strategic value scorecard at that time. Mm-hmm. We went through a fairly extensive planning process that I think the commission's gotten a briefing on earlier in January. In fact, we have sort of covered pieces of that process. And it establishes the priorities of the community, and then the scorecards used to score programs. And I think even in January, you had asked a question about how the projects were selected, and I acknowledged that we did a year's worth of planning, and we made great headway in terms of really finding out what the community needs were, assessing those, finding out what our strategic priorities were, and figuring out a plan for how to align those values to the kinds of decisions about what should get funded. What we didn't have a lot of time for, and what we weren't able to resolve, were how to create an allocation plan over the course of 5 years and have just an open RFP process. Mm-hmm. It's a little different than if you're just contracting for services and you're hiring someone to maybe implement a program in the next year. You're planning 5 years out. Most organizations aren't thinking that far, so it's a different kind of process. So what we did was we engaged, and we engaged folks that we currently have relationships with, folks that are current subrecipients, and then folks that had been, we did 50 consultations with area agencies for that plan. So we engaged some of them to ask them to supplement what were the city programs that we typically fund with our community development block grant dollars, and we got additional projects to score. We went through that process. This project in particular was the highest scoring project by far, and it was a big turning point for us in terms of understanding what kinds of projects would have a high strategic value in Battle Creek. And it was a high value project because it was along a major corridor coming into downtown. It was reactivating vacant land. It had gone through a community process and was part of a much larger vision for a whole area, so a larger plan. So there were a bunch of reasons why this project scored higher. And since then, we've gone on to score lots of other projects. That piece, it took us a couple of years to figure out how we might have a different kind of solicitation process for projects, and we implemented that most recently with our home ARP funds that we received from HUD, and that the City Commission reviewed a home ARP allocation plan within the last couple of months. It used a process where we were able to take what we learned, put that out for open solicitation to the public, educate folks about the uses of those funds, and then be able to allocate using a scorecard similar to what we've done in this instance, and then allocate to those projects. And it's what we'd like to do in future plans. And in 2019, we simply didn't have the time to do that, and there were too many unanswered questions for us to be able to have that kind of process. So while I think we were able to have a process that led to funds going out into the community for the first time in many, many years, which hadn't happened previous to that. Most of our previous plan only had CDBG dollars funding city administered projects. So it didn't, it wasn't where we wanted to be. So in this instance, so this project was originally slated in 2019. It was included in the annual action plan that we discussed first at a workshop in January, and then that did go through the public engagement process and comment period, and then come in front of the commission in May. And then this is, to be fair, all aspects of that project weren't included. It was simply a short description of the project with a budget line item and saying, hey, this is a part of our plan, and now this is the contract for that.
So I think we never could have anticipated, if I may, Mayor, we couldn't have anticipated that ARPA was coming down the road when these plans were being made, right? But now we have made some pretty significant investments in that organization already. And I'm just curious, what happens if we don't approve this? Is it possible to go back and look at the process by which we might allocate those funds?
So we made our commitment early on, knowing that this would be a $1.8 to $2 million project. We didn't commit to funding the whole project. We said, we'll be the first money in, but it's contingent on you securing the other funds. We originally planned we programmed this in our 5-year plan for years 4 and 5, which would be years 2023 and 2024. They then went out looking to get the other funds to be able to do this project. And a part of their securing the additional funds, so they have a couple of different sources, but a part of that was going to the city for ARPA funds. And so they made an application, maybe the first time for most folks realize maybe folks were funding it with ARPA funds without understanding that there were other community development block grant dollars committed to the project. But we were already committed to the project before that. So if it didn't get approved, then that would leave a gap in their funding for that particular project that has, they've lined up all of the other funding for this project so far.
So I appreciate on their end, that's the impact. What's the impact on the city if it isn't?
We would need to figure out, well, it would depend on if it was, it depended on what the response was. If it was just not to fund this, we'd need to figure out, is there something we need to change about this proposal in order to make it a better proposal? If we need to come up with a different way to allocate the funds, then it would be the city, then it would be our divisions department then to figure out how to reallocate that. We have a 5-year plan, so we would be first trying to work within the confines of that plan. And then I don't know from there yet. It hasn't actually happened too often, so we'd have to sort that out.
Thank you. And just in conclusion, I'm not in opposition to this project. I just am curious if this is an inflection point for us as a commission and the city to look at how we allocate resources. And is it an opportunity for us to pause and say, let's really put some thinking behind how we want to do this inclusively, because we are a different organization now as a city than we were 5 years ago as well, right? The world has changed, and so I'm just curious if there's an opportunity for us here. I don't know if there's a question there, just a statement, but thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris.
Any other questions by the commission at this time?
I'm sorry, thank you, sir. Just appreciation for bringing that up and not understanding. Both of my colleagues have had great questions in clarifying about ARPA dollars, clarifying how the process looks, and identifying areas for us to continue to grow as a city. And I would hope that we would use this as a springboard into the next time that this happens, looking at some of that growth we've made over the past few years, learning with ARPA dollars, learning with housing and the housing constraints we have and how pressed they've become. So thank you to both of you. I think that's really been enlightening to myself.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, my question is, okay, so if this was approved back in 2019, why are we just now distributing the funds? I guess I'm not understanding why it took so long and why are we at this point now?
So this is the community development planning process, which is not, it's not short. Everything moves kind of slowly. You plan about 5 years. Well, actually, you even start planning. Some things might be planned 6 or 7 years in advance before they're actually funded. And so every 5 years, we have to put together a consolidated plan, do an extensive community needs process, public engagement process, consult with area agencies, and then put together a plan that basically programs, anticipate how much money we're likely to receive from the federal government over the course of 5 years. We receive those funds yearly. It's a formula allocation from HUD, so you can reasonably predict how much you're likely to get, or a ballpark figure. You project out 5 years, and then you have to do planning around how you're going to spend that money, and you really have to determine what are the uses of those funds in advance. And then you are restricted to those uses in the future. You can do substantial amendments to change that, and that involves about the same amount of process as it takes to put together, not as much work to write a whole plan, but in terms of process, publishing the plan, public comment, public hearings, and commission approval, that kind of thing. So then you can modify a plan that way. But generally, we lay out the outlines of the plan and do that. Now, this project was supposed to go in, was slotted for years 4 and 5. The funds were going to be broken up over 2 years, but because they secured their funding early, we moved some money around and we're allowed to do that through a minor amendment process, which is just a sort of administrative move.
So just for clarifications, Chris, then, so this $420,000, is that going to be a lump sum, or are you just going to distribute it? I mean, how does that look? I guess.
So when we enter into any agreement, they get paid for services rendered. So it will be pay as you go. They can make draws for any work that's completed, and the contract will govern all of that. It includes the details in there about how payment will occur, when they can receive those funds, and how we'll distribute them. Okay. So that one of the first things they'll have to establish, because there are multiple sources of funding, and our piece is just a smaller piece, they'll have to establish a draw schedule. And these are some things that may not be in their other funding agreements with other funders, but because of HUD and because there are so many strings attached to these CDBG dollars, it does mean that there's going to be a lot more oversight as a result of this particular set of funds being in the project. I mean, they're held to a certain set of outcomes over the course of 5 years. They have to do quarterly reporting. They have to meet a national objective, which will require that they're serving moderate and low-income families, and they'll have to be able to demonstrate that on a quarterly basis to staff, so there'll continue to be oversight. And that's, so in terms of being able to meet the objectives of our consolidated plan, this helps to ensure that this development will do that.
Thank you very much for that, Chris.
Commissioner Bonica.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to point out, as we heard here tonight in public comment, and also that I've heard from other community members, the optics of this looks very questionable. I believe this youth daycare received 1.2 plus million in ARPA funds, and now another 420 from the city. It looks like a city-funded daycare. Even though we need daycares, the optics of it are not favorable. I just would like to point that out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments at this time? Commissioner Blood.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Vice Mayor. You spurred my thinking with some of your questions. So when I go to the contract and I look under Section D7, this is basically a mortgage loan, right? This is an amount that we're providing, and it can be deferred and forgivable at the end of a 5-year retention period.
It would be, as long as they met all the obligations, it would be.
And the
forgiven.
okay, and so the obligations would be under the period of performance, correct? That they're having to meet certain benchmarks, and those would have to be, like you said, presented, I think you said maybe yearly or quarterly?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yeah, they'll have an end-of-year report, but quarterly they have to, and it's not like if they don't meet benchmarks, it doesn't get forgiven. They have to meet a national objective. Just broadly stated, that means a whole lot of things. So a lot of the different items that are listed in there, but primarily they have to serve moderate and low-income folks, and they have to do it in adherence with the laws or the regulations set out by HUD. So there's a lot of different regulations that would come to bear. But if they do that, then it would be forgiven after 5 years.
Okay, so it sounds like, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that is pretty much consistent with any kind of, with most uses of CDBG funds. So if you're doing rent rehab or minor home repair or anything like that, typically it's a 5-year retention period in order to meet a national objective.
Okay, but in how you explained it, it sounded like it would be very hard not to be deferred. Like they would have to meet like some catastrophic, weird, non-thing, because you said it sounded very broad, so it would be very hard for them not to get deferred. So if something happens and they took their first lump sum and then something, they're not paying that.
I would say that 95% of all projects that we fund with CDBG funds, probably higher than that, meet their national objective through the affordability period. That we do have a couple of instances where that hasn't happened, and we've had to recoup funds or some portion of the funds, depending on what the situation is.
Okay. And these funds specifically are only going toward the building itself and construction, not to administrative or anything else like that?
Yeah, we're just funding the development, and then they do have obligation to provide services for 5 years through us. So that's part of that retention agreement.
And when you say through
We don't,
you, what
so
is?
we don't, that's a requirement that's per this contract in this agreement.
So for 5 years, they would have to run that facility, and then but you said through you. I don't
No,
understand that.
so our contract covers a period of 5 years. They have to report for 5 years. They have to meet all the obligations of the agreement for 5 years.
Okay.
And that's a HUD guideline.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being available for all these questions.
Sure.
Any other questions for Chris? If not, please vote on Resolution 501. Thank you, Chris.
I'm refreshing it.
Resolution 501 has been approved. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 502. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Certain Michigan water, wastewater, and public works agencies have formed the Michigan Water/Wastewater Agency Response Network, MIWARN, to share resources and assist each other in the form of personnel, equipment, material, and supplies in the event of emergencies that disrupt utility services. As part of the Department of Public Works' goal to gain accreditation by the American Public Works Association, staff has been reviewing the mutual aid agreements in place as well as those that are available. The City of Battle Creek has an agreement with 9 local public agencies which have been in place since 1999. The APWA accreditation process suggests that both local and regional agreements be available to better respond to expanding natural disasters and other local emergencies. If approved, this resolution authorizes the city manager to execute the Michigan Water/Wastewater Agency Response Network Mutual Aid and Assistance Agreement. Membership in this agreement would give the City of Battle Creek access to assistance from 53 other communities.
I move to approve Resolution 502.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve Resolution 502. Are there any questions by the commission? Clarifications or comments? Seeing none, would you please vote on 502? Resolution 502 has been approved. We have our new fire chief in the building today, and we'd like to call upon Ted Deering to introduce him.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that acknowledgement. As the commission knows, we have been going through the process of hiring a new chief. I believe the chief's first day is October 17th, if I'm correct, but the chief's he's in town finishing up the onboarding process, was able to join us this evening. So, Chief, if you would just like to introduce yourself real quick, that'd
Chief,
be great.
feel free to take a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Publicly? Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you for a moment. My name is Bill Beatty. I'm from the Springfield, Illinois area. I stood in this room about a month ago and introduced myself as the next fire chief for Battle Creek, and now tonight here I am. I'm extremely grateful to this body and to City Manager Fleury for the opportunity to become a member of this wonderful community and also to join the team of the Battle Creek Fire Department. This body and this community has an outstanding group of dedicated people in the fire department, and I'm very excited to get started and become part of all of it.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Battle Creek.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the general public comment, and limited to 3 minutes per individual. If you'd like to make general public comment regarding matters over which the City Commission has control, please raise your hand, and we will call on you to acknowledge you, and then come forward to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. Please state your name and address prior to beginning your comment. Are there any public comments at this time? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm here not so much here today to yell at you guys for once. So Sunday morning was the start of a series of drive-by shootings in my area. So, oh right, I forgot, sorry, Michelle Gregrela, 202 South Avenue. So there have been 5 drive-by shootings since Monday morning. The police were given description of the 4 individuals involved, their 2 vehicles, the types of guns that were seen. And now, we're at the 5th one at 2:30 in the morning where a 2-year-old was shot dead in Post neighborhood. I want to know why the information that was given to the police, no, there's been nothing on their social media about active shooters in our neighborhood. Nothing, nothing. The public knew nothing. Since Sunday morning, people's houses have been getting shot up, and not a damn thing has been done. If you support this, if you continue to support this police chief, I don't know what to tell you. That's ridiculous. A 2-year-old is dead. A mother is grieving her child right now because our police department didn't do their job. But we'll give them new guns, right? We'll give them a new police station. We'll give them whatever the hell they want, right? But they're not doing their job.
I'm going to ask you not to use any foul
I don't
language.
care, Benke.
Thank you very much. Please sit down then. Any other public comments at this time? Yes, John.
John Kennevic, 234 South Avenue. In regards to what the other person just stood up here, well, the last few days in the early morning hours, I get to hear gunshots, semi-automatic fire. I don't usually call the police because I don't think it's really worthwhile. But that put aside, it's approximately 9:12, and I'm sure you guys follow a procedure, and so do I. This is part of the law.
All right, John, you can hand those to the clerk. You can hand those to the clerk.
They have to be handed out because I'm a process server. You can't give them to the clerk. She's not going to sign off on them. I have to sign off on them. These are subpoenas. You seen you in court? Nice talking.
Are there any other public comments at this time?
Oh, still got 2 more minutes. But I'll reserve those minutes for somebody else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments at this time? Any other public comments? See none. Commission comments? Yes, Commissioner Benica Herring.
Thank you, sir. So I have 2 comments. The first one is, I would like us to remember that we are all human and to let us be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. And part of the housing issue that is going on in this city and the high rate of homeless population is because of people discriminating against and criminalizing homeless persons. That was the first comment. And secondly, I would like to make a comment in response to the last commission meeting. So there was concern about me wearing an AirPod in my ear. So in September of last year, I had a stroke and COVID pneumonia within a 30-day time frame, which left me with severe lung damage. I'm currently on home use oxygen, as well as Bill, who is my oxygen tank that sits in my purse when I need it. I wear an AirPod because it is connected to my phone, and for Bluetooth purposes, I have had issues in my home where I had to call 911 with a cell phone that was upstairs, and I was in the basement. That is the only reason that I am utilizing a Bluetooth device, is for safety purposes, a cell phone that is linked to my medical history, so that if I call 911 from my AirPod in my ear, it links with all my medical information to 911. That is the only concern. I do not touch it. It does not get played with while I am in a commission meeting. I am about business when I am here. It is strictly for medical purposes only, so that if my child, who is normally in the audience but has not been in the last 6 meetings, is not with me, my medical information is on and connected to my phone for a priority 1 medical status. So I just wanted to be transparent about that, because I don't want people to think that I am not paying attention. And that, you know, there's any kind of comment or question about it, I'm willing to talk about. I just wanted everyone to know I am paying attention, and it is only for medical purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commission comments at this time? Commissioner Blood.
Just letting everyone know that I will not be here the next meeting. I will be driving across country, bringing my mom. Battle Creek is growing by 1 more resident. She will be moving here. And so I'm sure we will be watching via YouTube however we can as we drive across country. So yeah, and thank you for people coming out. I'm glad that we're back in person. And I'm hoping if, you know, you want to be a part of this process, you continue to not only come here, but also attend neighborhood planning committee meetings. Those are something that is starting to go. So please, you know, get in touch with any of us, and we'd be happy to let you know which ones are running. Call the city, ask them. It's just another great way to get to know your neighbors, get to know city employees who come and are present. And I'm hoping our new fire chief will start making the rounds so we can introduce him, because we love having speakers at ours, and he would be a wonderful speaker. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commission comments at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much for your hard work tonight, and please have a good night. This meeting is adjourned.